Okay, today's session, even though it's after Parshas Ki Seitzei, I wanted to discuss a very important topic. Usually we never discuss Parsha after the Parsha is already read, to we already learned it. But we had a three-part series on Sinius, importance of modesty, which is a very important topic which we covered in depth with tremendous amount of sources, tremendous amount of research and work went into that. But I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to say this also because of the importance. It says in Ki Seitzei, in Chav Beis Yud Gimel, Ki Yikach Ish Isha. It's talking about when someone gets married over here. You know, a lot of people have many misunderstandings of marriage over here. Okay. Marriage counselor once said that there was a family that was experiencing severe shalom bayis issues, major problems between the peace in the house over there. And one day he stayed home from work. He wasn't feeling well. And the man said, that day when I was home, usually worked every single day, obviously. And he said he was around when his wife was preparing dinner. This is what the man told the marriage counselor. And he said he was lying in bed and he was able to hear his wife, who was working very hard in the kitchen, getting the food ready for him and the children. And this was a heaven sent opportunity. This was a golden opportunity for him to realize that food doesn't prepare itself. Dinner doesn't cook itself. Someone has to work hard for many hours, plan menus, shop, cook, clean it up, so that everyone could enjoy a delicious meal together. But he said what was really the nail in the coffin, what hit him the hardest, is that so much time went into preparing that meal. And then within minutes, all the food disappeared. Hours of work for a few minutes of eating. Nothing was left at all from all the work. It takes a lot of strength of character to invest time, energy, effort into something that disappears in minutes. Let's say, for example, someone is a contractor. He's a builder. He builds buildings. He's a painter. He paves roads. You could look at and enjoy the fruits of your labor for many years after. People are going to recognize, wow, this is a beautiful achievement that lasts. And the effort is well worth it. But what type of recognition does a woman get for all of her hard work preparing food for her family? It only lasts as long as it takes for the food to be consumed. And the harder she works to prepare the food, the quicker her achievement will last, the less it will last. Because the more a person puts into cooking a meal, the tastier it will be and the faster it will be devoured. She'll be lucky if she gets a quick thank you. So he says, once I saw the meal, the entire meal preparation process from the beginning to the end, he said, I appreciated the greatness of my wife who worked so hard to prepare food, not only for today, but every day since we were married. For years, this is what happened every single day, and she never complained once. From that day on, I had more appreciation. From that day on, my attitude towards my wife improved dramatically, as well as my shalom bayis. This is just one example of many things that wives do. This creates a special bond between the couple and helps with their relationship. This is why, even let's say the husband cooks a meal, the husband grills, it's a man's job, so to say, grilling, right?
Mhm.
So the other spouse should always express gratitude and thanks for working hard. It's another story it was told by a marriage counselor. Another man said he was experiencing bad shalom bayis issues. The peace in the house was not good. And from marriage counselor says, from the way that it was described to me, it was obvious that the husband, he was very sincere. And he was careful to do everything that he could for both his wife and his children as well. However, this husband, he had a misunderstanding. He didn't value these achievements that he did in these areas at all. And his self-esteem was very low. His lack of self-worth. And that was negatively impacting his shalom bayis. When they were meeting, this individual said he was talking very highly of one of his neighbors. He said he was involved in so much chesed, tremendous acts of kindness. And he said that his neighbor, when someone in his community, a man, passed away, he left his wife as a widow with many young orphans. And this neighbor, he decided to care for these orphans by taking them to school, learning with them in his own house every day, helping them with homework, and talking to them and giving them encouragement. And he supported them as well. So the marriage counselor turned to this individual after he was done talking and said, "Do you hear what you're saying? You just told me about all the wonderful things your neighbor does for these orphans, and you can't stop talking about the acts of kindness that he did. But let me ask you a question. If a person takes care of his own children, if a person sets aside time to help his wife, is that person not considered a Baal Chesed? That person is involved with tremendous acts of kindness. And here's the idea that sometimes people might have heard, but never really properly understood this idea. Don't our sages teach us, don't the Chachamim say, the greatest mitzvah is to help those who are closest to us? And that if we have to choose between helping someone who's a relative and someone who's not, we're obligated to help our relative first. So the marriage counselor said, why are you so impressed with your neighbor and not impressed with yourself being so devoted to your wife and children? You take the children to school. You learn with them every day. You help them with their homework. You support them financially just because they're your children and their mother is your wife. Is this not a significant act of kindness? So the man, he was taken aback. He didn't even know how to respond, but once he properly absorbed it, his shalom bayis began to significantly improve. From this incident, this is an example, but we see how skewed people's attitude towards chesed is. Yes, we say in the beginning of Musaf, Kol mi shoichkin b'sar chitzibur, be'emuna kadosh baruch hu, yishalem schar v'chol mi shoichkin b'sar chitzibur, be'emuna hakadosh baruch hu, yishalem. Yes, whoever is involved with acts of kindness on a communal level, he'll be repaid. We have to realize that chesed, acts of kindness, tzedakah, charity, it begins in the house first. Do people realize this? Do people realize, says Rav Zilberstein and Alin L'Shabeach over here, that the greatest chesed a person could do is to be kind to his own family? The parents realize that they do hundreds of acts of kindness each and every day, fulfilling the mitzvah of "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," loving others like ourselves. These acts that we do are considered mitzvahs, even though they're done for loved ones. We have a natural tendency to please. The Alter of Slobodka says that kindness that is done for one's family members is even more valuable and is even considered a more complete act of kindness than kindness done for someone outside his family. Let that thing sink in. This is the Alter of Slobodka. All of the yeshivas, the entire yeshiva movement comes from Slobodka. Slobodka, Kelm, Navardik. Every person is born with a natural desire to give and to contribute. But guess what? A lot of times people feel shame when they depend on others. No one wants to be a taker, everyone wants to be a giver. Therefore, every act of kindness or giving is tarnished, is messed up by the shame that the recipient of the kindness experiences. In other words, remember once I asked, you remember Rabbi Tawil from Shayashiv?
Yeah.
I said, do you have any Rebbe
With
tricks? He said before he was leaving to go on to the next yeshiva, he said, do you have any Rebbe tricks? So he told me a few things. One of the things that he said is, look, a lot of times people are going to be paying you money. Some are going to be paying a lot of money. Don't feel bad taking the money. You are providing a service. Don't feel bad. Even when a person, the idea is 100% allowed to take the money. He's receiving something. He worked hard for it. Sometimes you could even feel bad a little bit. Certainly, if a person is not taking money, someone is totally, he's receiving staka. He needs to receive money. Staka. He needs to. Sometimes that mitzvah that a person does when he gives, it hurts the receiver's feeling. He feels a little shame. Could take away from that act of kindness that he's doing. Conversely, if we are providing an act of kindness for a family member, does the family member experience any shame? No. When was the last time a kid ever said, oh, I feel in the back of my head, it's so nice of my parents to cover the expenses for this meal and pay for it? Doesn't happen. As opposed to when an uncle takes you out, when a grandparent takes you out and they cover the bill and you see it's an expensive bill at the restaurant, you feel a little, oh, obviously you say thank you, but that's the difference. So certainly if a friend takes you out and covers your meal expenses, they take you out, you see, it's paid $100 for you at a nice restaurant, whatever. Take this one step further. The person closest to a man is his wife. And therefore, she is going to be the person who is the least ashamed to receive kindness from him, and vice versa. Therefore, says the Alter in his Or HaSafon, Chelik Aleph, page 162, kindness that is done with the person's spouse is the most perfect form of kindness. That's it. Because it's not tarnished by any shame, by the recipient's shame. Simcha Cohen quotes these words in Abayis Yehudi. And he says that Avram Avinu, who is known as the quintessential Baal Chesed, someone who was involved with kindness, was called the Roidev Stock of a Chesed, the pasuk in Mishlei Chaf Aleph. Someone who chases after righteousness and kindness, charity. That was specifically referring to the kindness that he did for his wife Sarah. That title wasn't given to him when he provided kindness for the strangers, only when it was for his wife. Let's finalize this point now. Many people are completely mistaken and are willing to jump In the middle of the night, they're willing to jump out of bed to help a friend or a stranger in crisis. But are they willing to jump out of bed to help their spouse or to take care of their children? The people jokingly say, when a baby's crying at the night, who's going to wake up to get the baby? So people jokingly quote the pasuk, Rabbi smach shavos belevish, vasas Hashem yisakum. You know this idea? Rabbi smach shavos
Mhm.
belevish. Men have a lot of thoughts in their mind. But at the end of the day, vasas Hashem yisakum. What Hashem planned, that what will happen? So
Mhm.
people jokingly darshan this pasuk. Men have a lot of thoughts. Should I get up, help the baby? Should I not get up? Vasas Hashem. But the Eitz of Hashem, the plan of Hashem, he, she should get up. He sakum, she should get up. Look, at the end of the day, you got to know what stage your infant is in. Talking about a newborn over here, and who needs to be nursed every 3 hours. You can't do nothing. If it's a
Mhm.
later stage, if there's already formula involved, if it's a diaper, you could already do something. So you have to know the cheshbon. But the point is that many people are willing to help strangers, but their own kids, forget about it. Many people are extremely sensitive to the feelings of others outside their family, but are totally inconsiderate when it comes to their own family members and their feelings. Someone who does kindness, chesed, for many people, whether it's if a person is capable of lending money to others, whether a person is capable, which most people are, visiting the sick, consoling mourners. We're talking about Bikur Cholim, Nicham Avelim, being Misameach Chassan Kala, bringing joy to a Chassan and Kala. Many people, if I do that, I'm going to get a lot of reward in the next world. By the way, I want to add something that's totally overlooked. People ever think about visiting prisoners? There's so many acts of kindness that are available. So people think they're going to get a tremendous amount of reward for performing these mitzvahs. They will, but you know what? The greatest reward that we're going to get, what they're concerned about in heaven, is how do we treat our spouse. In fact, Reb Chaim Vital, the Talmud Muvak of the Arizal, top student of the Arizal, says that a person's midos, his characteristic traits, are evaluated, are measured by the way he treats his spouse. If someone is kind to their spouse, that individual will be fortunate. But if the opposite happens, if a spouse isn't willing to share the burden or is harsh with words, this behavior will determine his fate in the next world. And none of the acts of kindness that he did for others are going to be taken into account. A slightly different topic within this topic. A widower, an almon, once came to Rav Zilberstein to discuss a shidduch, but a potential person to marry. And he said, this woman over here, she's a very special person. She has 5 children. And he says, when I told my relatives about this shidduch, they looked at me, did you lose your mind? You're going to marry someone who already has 5 children? He said, she was God-fearing. Yireh Shamayim. And he said he didn't have a problem supporting the 5 children. So what's the problem? The rabbi said like this, maybe some of your family members discourage this potential spouse for a simple reason. There's a lot of difficulties and hardships that the woman's children might cause him. Always second marriages with stepchildren are always tricky. And, you know, you might suffer a lot by living with 5 children that aren't your own. And they're going to feel no natural love towards you. They're not even going to be interested in being around you. So the man looked surprised. He thought that the rabbi was going to tell him that his family members, that they were exaggerating. And he would be certain that the rabbi was going to pat him on the shoulder and encourage him to marry this woman that had 5 children and take care of them very carefully. But instead, he's hearing the exact opposite. But after making it clear what such a marriage would entail, he related the following story of the Beis Halevi, Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik. And listen to this incredible story. The Beis Halevi lost his wife. And sometime later, he traveled to Warsaw to have his farm printed. During that trip, a shidduch was suggested, a potential match. And listen to this. It was a widow with 8 children. 8.
Oh,
And guess what? He married her. When the people who were close to him asked why he agreed to such a marriage, he responded that freeing a naguna is one of the most important mitzvahs in the Torah, and someone who does so is considered to have rebuilt the ruins of Yerushalayim. Naguna is a woman who is unable to remarry because it is unsure if her husband passed away or not. Or it's a husband who didn't give a get to his wife. That's an aguna. So the question is, what does marrying this widow have to do with freeing an aguna? Talking about one is an aguna, one is an almana. Beis Halevi responded, if I don't marry this woman with 8 children, who will marry her? She's going to be a widow her entire life. Who would be willing to bring a woman like this into their home? Who in their right mind would marry someone with 8 children? Who would take upon himself the burden, the effort, the toil, the work that involves raising these children? Says the Beis Halevi. Because of that concern, I decided to personally marry her, so she would not remain a virtual aguna the rest of her life. There are many different types of currency in the world. The history of currency is no currency ever made it through. Every currency eventually collapsed because of hyperinflation. Many currencies. What's the currency in heaven? That currency lasts. What's the currency in heaven? You have to have intrinsic value for it to last. The currency in heaven is mesiras nefesh, self-sacrifice. There's no greater self-sacrifice than this which the Beis Halevi did over here, who committed himself to raise a family of orphaned children and to free a widow from a lifetime of solitude. The end of this story is that this marriage caused the famous Soloveitchik dynasty of Brisk to result. That whole dynasty came from this. tangentially, if we're already discussing agunas. Oh, so before that, so Zilberstein said back, if you want to merit extraordinary success, who was considering to marry this widow of 5 children, follow the Beis Halevi's lead. No question, it's going to be a difficult task and involve unimaginable effort on your part, but the reward that will follow will also be unimaginable as well. On the subject of freeing an aguna, should point out that the Marsham in his Shilos and Shuvas Chelik Aleph, Siman Pei Dalet says, this tshuva, this responsa I wrote on Tisha B'Av. What? How could you do such a thing? You can't learn Torah on Tisha B'Av? How are you allowed to write a tshuva, halachic responsa on Tisha B'Av? The Marsham himself asked that question. And he answers it by explaining that this tshuva that I wrote, this responsa, involved an urgent matter relating to freeing an aguna. And someone who frees an aguna is considered to have rebuilt the ruins of Yerushalayim. Therefore, being involved with such a mitzvah is incredibly appropriate for Tisha B'Av when we mourn the destruction of Yerushalayim in the Beis Hamikdash. One last point on this fundamental topic. Yael. Yael became famous because she was the Jewish woman who killed the great general Sisera. We have Rosh Hashanah coming up. Sisera, the 100 blows of the shofar correspond to the 100 tears of Sisera's mother, many Torahs and ideas behind that. And Sisera fled after his army was losing. He fled like a coward to save his life. And he went to the tent of Yael, who he thought would care for her. And Yael gave her drinks and got him very tired. And ended up killing Sisera herself.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Killed by a woman.
Guys, schedules are over here.
Killed by a woman. This causes salvation for all the Jewish people. The general's dead. That's it. Show's over. Tana de Eliyahu in Perek Tes says, why did Yael, the wife of Chever Haknani, why did she merit this more than any other woman? This great salvation came about through her. Why her? Tana de Eliyahu answers, she was a special woman because she did her husband's will. And from here, the rabbis teach us that there's no virtuous woman except for a woman who does the will of her husband. Out of the entire Jewish people and the entire nation, the individual who merited bringing the salvation for all the Jewish people was Yael. A woman who what? Who did her husband's will. Isha kisheira oitze ratzon baila. We see from here how great it is for a woman to follow her husband and do what he says. Where does the Tana de Eliyahu learn this from? Where does the Tana de Eliyahu derive that Yael's merit was that she did her husband's will? Rav Chaim Kanievsky explains that the Navi does not mention any praise of Yael other than the fact that she was the wife of Chever Hakini. That's it. This is the only description of Yael, and she's described like this 3 times. It must be, explains Rav Chaim Kanievsky, that her distinguished characteristic is that she was a good wife. AKA, she did the will of her husband. And from the fact that it's repeated 3 times, that shows that she's praiseworthy because of this chazaka. And that's an amazing praise. Those are a few ideas and stories that I thought were very practical to share. And like I said when we started, even though it's after Parshas Ki Seitzei, I think the relevancy of that applies the entire year. So every single day, a person's married. Every single day, a person's a parent. Incredibly relevant information. Any questions, comments on anything that we did today whatsoever?
No.
Okay, so Mirza Hashem, the plan is we have 3 simanim at the end of Hilchos Rosh Hashanah that we didn't do, and we will complete those simanim. I looked at them, all of them, and we're going to go through them properly and finish all of Hilchos Rosh Hashanah except for Shofar. A tremendous task, and that's what we will be learning in the upcoming days. It's going to talk about Aseret Simei Tshuva. It's going to talk about other very relevant halachas about Rosh Hashanah also. So we're going to tackle that the next few days. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Shkar.
Welcome to you.
Have a nice day.
Yeah.